The morning sun filtered lazily through the cream-colored curtains of the Boulder Hillside Hotel. Clara Bennett sat at the edge of the bed, still in the silk robe she'd worn while getting ready for the wedding the night before. Her heels were tossed in the corner. Her carefully curled hair was now a soft mess. The smile she had worn all day for her brother's wedding had long disappeared, replaced by the quiet exhaustion of someone who had given too much. She reached for her phone to check out of the hotel and pay the bill. That's when everything changed. She opened her banking app out of habit, but the number that stared back at her didn't make sense. Her balance had dropped to $1,632.34. Just last weekend, it had been over $10,000. Her breath hitched. She blinked, thinking there must be a glitch, a misread, a joke. Her thumb hovered over the Transactions tab, and then she whispered almost to herself. David, her boyfriend, David Callahan, was buttoning up his shirt across the room. He turned at the sound of her voice, immediately catching the panic in her tone. What is it? My account, Clara said slowly. 8,400. It's gone. David crossed the room in seconds, took the phone from her hand, and scrolled quickly through the transaction history. His brows furrowed. These transfers, you didn't do these? Clara shook her head. No, the screen showed 3 major withdrawals made in the span of 20 minutes, all timestamped just the night before. $2,000 to a credit card in the name of Lauren Hughes, her older sister. For $1,000 to an account under Carter Hughes, her brother-in-law. And $2,400 to Barbara Bennett, her mother. Clara's lips parted, but no words came out. She remembered taking a quick shower while David had stepped out to get them late-night tea. Her phone had been on the nightstand. David's voice dropped, clipped and sharp. That's identity theft. Unauthorized access. Clara stared at the wall. The nausea came in waves. Just then her phone rang. It was her mother. Still in a daze, Clara answered, putting it on speaker. Hi, sweetheart, Barbara chirped. Just wanted to say thank you again for yesterday. Ethan looked so happy. Clara sat up straighter. Mom, I need to ask you something. Barbara hummed lightly. There were several transfers made from my account last night. Thousands of dollars. Do you know anything about that? There was a pause and then a bright laugh. Honestly, I thought it'd be more than that. Lauren said your account had more than she expected, so we just split it up. It's for Ethan, honey. Think of it as your wedding gift. Clara's blood ran cold. What? Her voice cracked. Carter's voice echoed faintly in the background. You're always loaded, but don't really use it. It was for a good cause. Come on. David stepped closer. His jaw was locked, his voice low but firm. That's theft. What you did is a federal crime. Barbara's tone shifted slightly, cooler now. Let's not be dramatic. We're family. Clara's always been self-focused. This is her way of helping. She's single, she earns well. Of course, she should contribute. Clara reached for the phone, hands trembling. How did you even get into my account? Lauren's voice chimed in. I used your phone. Your password hasn't changed in years. It was easy. And with that, the line went dead. For a long moment, neither of them moved. David was the first to speak. We need to leave. But not home, not yet. Clara nodded slowly, numbness flooding her limbs. Her voice came out like a whisper, but her words were steel. We're going to my parents' house. I want to hear them say it to my face. David placed a hand on her shoulder. Stay calm, okay? No matter what happens, stay calm. Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to, because in that moment, something inside her had changed. This wasn't just about the money. It was about what the money revealed, and what it had always meant to them. The drive to her childhood home in southeast Denver felt longer than it should have. Clara didn't speak. Her mind reeled with fragmented memories. Christmas mornings, birthday dinners, the laughter around that living room, all now overlaid with betrayal. David drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally brushing her knee. When they pulled into the driveway, Clara froze. It was a modest brick house with white shutters, utterly ordinary. But today it looked like a fortress of hypocrisy. David cut the engine. "Are you sure about this?" Clara nodded. "They owe me an explanation." She stepped out, each footfall heavy, purposeful. David followed, closely behind. Before they reached the door, it creaked open. Her father, Philip Bennet, stood there in his flannel robe, coffee in hand, as if this were just any other Saturday. "Clara, I thought you and David were heading back to the city." She walked past him without a word. Her boots echoed against the hardwood floors as she entered the living room. Lauren was sitting cross-legged on the couch, scrolling her phone. Carter sat beside her, relaxed, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's Best Dad." Barbara was fluffing a pillow. They all looked up and froze. Clara didn't sit. "How did you access my account?" Lauren blinked. "I already told you. Your phone. While you were showering. The password was still your graduation year. Don't look so shocked." Clara's voice trembled. "Why would you do that?" Carter leaned back, one arm draped casually over the sofa. "Because we needed it. Do you know how expensive it is raising kids? Clara, you live alone. You travel. You buy designer handbags and espresso machines. Meanwhile, we're drowning in expenses." Clara stared at him. "So that gives you the right to steal from me?" Barbara spoke up, her tone soft and dismissive. "Clara, don't make this bigger than it is. We've always supported each other. It's what families do. You're blowing this out of proportion." David stepped forward. "No, she's not. What you did was unauthorized access and theft. That's a criminal offense." Philip, who had wandered back into the room, lowered his newspaper. "Son, don't bring the law into family matters." "Then maybe you should have acted like family," Clara snapped. Lauren scoffed. "Oh, please. You think you're better than us because you make 6 figures and live in a high-rise? We're the ones struggling. You think gifts and birthday checks make you superior? That's just your duty. You don't have a family of your own. You should help the one you came from." Clara's breath caught. For years, she had tried to be generous. She bought Harry a laptop for school. She paid for Margaret's ballet lessons when Lauren and Carter couldn't. She thought she was helping, not paying rent for love. "Unbelievable," she said quietly. "You don't even see it." "See what?" Barbara asked, arms folded. "That I was never your daughter, just your donor." The room fell silent. "You think I'm selfish because I kept some part of my life just for me, because I didn't hand over every dollar the second you hinted. But what about you? What kind of people steal in the night and call it love?" Barbara shook her head. "We didn't steal. We borrowed." David let out a short laugh. "Borrowed? With no intent to return it? With deception and unauthorized use? That's not borrowing. That's criminal." Philip stood up. "You need to leave, both of you. This house doesn't need threats or drama." David turned to Clara. "You ready?" She didn't respond. She looked at the faces around the room. Her sister's disdain, her mother's detachment, her father's indifference, her brother-in-law's smug entitlement. This was her family, and they didn't even flinch. "We're done here," she said, turning for the door. "But this isn't over." As they stepped outside, Carter called out, "Don't be so mad, Clara. With your salary, you'll make it back in no time." Clara stopped, but didn't turn around. "No," she said, "you won't." And with that, she closed the car door, severing something silent but final. The drive back to Denver was silent, but Clara's thoughts were anything but. She stared out the window, her reflection staring back at her with hollow eyes. Her family had just stolen from her, lied to her, justified it, and somehow still believed they had done nothing wrong. Every word they said echoed in her mind, not with confusion, but with clarity. David's hands were tight on the steering wheel, his jaw set. When they got back to Clara's apartment, he placed her phone on the kitchen counter and poured 2 glasses of water. "Do you want to talk?" Clara shook her head. "Not yet." Instead, she went to her desk and pulled out a worn folder. She hadn't touched it in years. It held past bank statements, notes from when she helped Lauren with bills, payment confirmations for Ethan's college prep program, even old Venmo transfers labeled Mom's Meds or Ballet Tuition. She flipped through the pages, one after another, until her fingers trembled. There was so much, too much. David approached quietly. "I know this is overwhelming, but Clara, I need to ask you something. What do you want to do?" She looked up. "I don't know. Do you want to let this go?" Clara hesitated. "They're my family, David." He crouched down next to her chair, meeting her eyes. "If a stranger took $8,400 from you while you were in the shower, would you go to the police?" "Of course." "Then why not now?" "Because it's complicated." "No, it's not. It's betrayal, and you didn't deserve it." Clara closed her eyes. She thought back to Lauren's voice. "You're single, you make a high salary, of course you should help." The way Carter had laughed as if she were overreacting, her mother's indifference, her father's silence. And suddenly it wasn't just about the $8,400. It was about every time they had made her feel guilty for being successful, for being independent, for simply living her own life. She turned back to the folder. "I want to know how far this goes." David nodded. "Then let's find out." For the next few hours, Clara dug into 3 years' worth of financial records. She built spreadsheets, highlighted patterns. Each time she paused, David was there with coffee, tissues, or silent support. By evening, she had a rough total. Over $15,000 in requests, loans, or emergencies from her family, most of which had never been repaid. But what struck her wasn't the number. It was the method. They always started with warmth. "We miss you. Harry's birthday is coming up. He really hopes you'll send something nice." Then came the guilt. "It's not easy raising kids. You wouldn't understand." And if she hesitated, the tone shifted. "You've changed. You're so selfish now. You don't care about family anymore." It wasn't just manipulation. It was emotional conditioning. David sat beside her, flipping through the documents. "You see it now, don't you?" Clara nodded. "They trained me to say yes, to ignore my own limits. And I thought I was being loving when I was just being used." He reached for her hand. "This isn't just theft. It's abuse. And it's time you fought back." Clara was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "Will you help me?" David didn't hesitate. Every step of the way. The next morning, David made a call to one of his colleagues at his law firm, a woman named Camille Dorsey, a seasoned financial crime attorney. That afternoon, she met them in their living room. After reviewing Clara's documents, Camille leaned back. "Clara, this is a textbook case of familial financial abuse. Just because they're blood doesn't mean they're allowed to steal from you." Clara hesitated, "But reporting them, it'll destroy what's left of my family." Camille didn't flinch. "They destroyed it the moment they decided you were a wallet, not a daughter." Clara looked down at the pile of evidence she had gathered. She saw not just numbers and names, but years of being minimized, drained, manipulated. She took a deep breath. "Let's do it. I'm ready." And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. Clara sat on the edge of her couch as Detective Selena Ward laid out a notepad, a recorder, and a quiet confidence that instantly filled the room. She wore no uniform, just a dark blazer, a simple ponytail, and eyes that had seen stories like Clara's more times than they should have. "Ms. Bennett," Selena began, "please walk me through what happened from the very beginning." Clara took a breath, steadying her voice. "It was the morning after my brother's wedding. I opened my banking app, and $8,400 was gone. The transactions were made while I was showering, all to members of my own family. Selena nodded, taking notes. You believe the access to your account was unauthorized? I'm sure of it. My sister used my phone without permission. She knew my password, something I hadn't changed in years. She made the transfers herself. I confronted them. They admitted everything, but said it was family duty. Like I owed them. Selena's pen paused for a moment. You're not the first case like this, but you are one of the rare ones willing to come forward. Beside Clara, David added, we've documented all communications, texts, emails, bank statements over the past 3 years. The pattern is extensive and consistent. Selena reviewed the folders, flipping through the highlighted statements, annotated spreadsheets, and screenshots. Her face remained unreadable. But then she closed the folder gently and looked up. This is clear evidence of financial exploitation, unauthorized access, theft, coercive behavior, possibly even conspiracy, depending on who coordinated what. Clara's stomach tightened. What happens now? First, a formal, preliminary investigation. That includes contacting involved parties, securing digital records, and verifying the legal framework for prosecution. If sufficient evidence is found, we'll forward the case to the district attorney's office. David placed a comforting hand on Clara's back. She didn't flinch, but she didn't relax either. Selena continued, I have to ask, are you emotionally prepared for what comes next? These are your parents, your sister. Once we initiate the process, there's no undoing it. Clara looked down at her hands. I don't think I am, but I also know I wasn't emotionally prepared to be robbed by them, and yet they did it anyway. Selena gave a small nod, then reached into her bag and pulled out a few forms. These are privacy release forms. They'll allow us to subpoena the account logs and transaction histories. Sign when you're ready. Clara picked up the pen and, with only a brief pause, signed each line. The next morning, Clara's phone vibrated nonstop. Missed calls, dozens of texts, all from her family. Lauren, Anna, did you seriously go to the police? Are you insane? You're going to ruin everything. Carter, my account's been frozen. How am I supposed to pay bills? You've crossed the line. Barbara, the police came to the house. Your father's heart is acting up again. What will the neighbors think? Is that what you want, to kill your father over a few dollars? Clara replied only once, to all of them. That's your own doing. Don't contact me again. By the afternoon, there was a knock on her apartment door. Clara opened it slowly, already knowing who it would be. Lauren stood there, mascara streaked, eyes bloodshot, and rage clinging to every syllable. What the hell are you doing? We're family. Clara didn't move. You want to talk? I'll call David. Lauren laughed bitterly. That lawyer? He's brainwashed you. You used to care. I still care, Clara said softly, but caring doesn't mean handing over my life to people who hurt me. Lauren's voice rose. We didn't hurt you. We asked for help. You stole from me. Lauren's face darkened. You've changed. Clara didn't hesitate. That's right. I've changed because you made me. And for the first time, she closed the door in her sister's face without a shred of guilt. A few days after slamming the door on Lauren, Clara stood in her kitchen, staring at a cup of untouched tea. The apartment was quiet, almost unnaturally so. David was working from his office down the hall, giving her space. But space didn't quiet the noise inside her chest. Then the doorbell rang. Clara opened it to find her younger brother, Ethan, standing with his hands deep in the pockets of his hoodie, his eyes full of shame. Can I come in? He asked quietly. Clara hesitated, then stepped aside. Yeah, of course. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't belong there. I heard everything about the police investigation, the accounts, Lauren freaking out. Clara folded her arms. I didn't have a choice. He nodded. I know. And I want you to know something. I didn't ask them to do any of this. The money, I never wanted that. I didn't know they'd take it from you." Clara looked at him. "Did you know they were planning it?" Ethan hesitated. Then, quietly, "I overheard Lauren and Carter talking about it. A week before the wedding. They said you'd never press charges if it was just a family gift. I didn't think they'd actually do it, and I didn't want to ruin the wedding by confronting them." Clara's voice was hollow. "So you stayed quiet." "I was scared. I didn't want to tear the family apart." Clara sat beside him, but it already was torn, Ethan. "You just didn't see it yet." He looked at the floor. "I want to help. I don't know what I can do, but I'll testify. I'll tell the truth." Clara's breath caught. "They'll disown you too." He gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe. But at least I'll still have my integrity. And maybe you." Clara squeezed his hand. "You always have me." Later that evening, as the sky darkened over Denver, her phone rang again. This time from a number she hadn't seen in weeks. Her father. Clara stared at the screen before answering. "Clara!" Philip's voice came through, weary and strained. "Why are you doing this?" Clara sat down slowly. "You know why. They searched our house. The police took our computers. Your mother hasn't slept in days. Lauren is falling apart. Carter's been suspended from work. And the mortgage company's calling us now. Is this what you wanted?" "No," Clara said, her voice level. "But it's what you caused." There was a long silence. Then, quietly, he said, "You're no longer our daughter." The words hit like cold steel. "You betrayed your family," Philip continued. "You'll never be welcome here again." He hung up. Clara didn't cry. She expected to. She waited for the ache in her chest to crush her. But instead, she felt weightless, unshackled, as if the chain they'd held around her neck for years had finally snapped. The next morning, Detective Selena Ward called. "Clara, we've officially filed charges against Lauren and Carter. Unauthorized access, theft, and conspiracy. Your parents, we don't have enough to charge them criminally, but they may still face civil liability. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for next week." "Thank you," Clara said, her voice steady. Selena paused. "Have you experienced any additional pressure or threats from them?" Clara remembered her father's final words. "They've disowned me," she said softly. "I'm sorry," Selena said gently. "If needed, we can file a restraining order." Clara didn't answer immediately. She looked around her apartment, her own space, her own rules, her own silence. "I think I'm okay. For now." That night, Clara told David everything. About Ethan, about the call from her father, about how she didn't feel broken, just finally free. "You did the right thing," David said quietly. "But I lost my family." David reached for her hand. "No, you lost the people who abused you and called it love. Real family doesn't take. It shows up. It stands beside you. It respects who you are." Clara nodded slowly, letting his words settle into the empty space where guilt used to live. She hadn't lost everything. She was starting over. And for the first time it would be on her terms. The courtroom was smaller than Clara expected. No grand pillars, no echoing ceilings, just beige walls, a wooden bench, and a judge who looked like she'd seen 100 broken families walk through her door. But for Clara, this wasn't just another hearing. It was the moment she stood up not just for herself, but for every version of her that had ever stayed silent. Lauren and Carter entered through the side door with their attorney. Their expressions were tight, resentful. Lauren wouldn't meet Clara's eyes. Carter, on the other hand, stared at her like she had ruined his life. Maybe she had, but not in the way he imagined. Ethan sat beside Clara, wearing a suit 2 sizes too big, hands clasped nervously. David was on her other side, calm and steady as always. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Then it began. The prosecution presented the financial records first. Clear, chronological, undeniable. Transfers made without consent. A digital trail that led straight from Clara's phone to accounts registered under her sister, brother-in-law, and mother. Then came Clara's own testimony. She spoke clearly, steadily, recounting the moment she opened her app, the confrontation, the manipulation masked as duty. Then Ethan stood. His voice shook at first, but he found his rhythm. I overheard them planning to take the money. They said Clara wouldn't fight back because she owed the family. They knew what they were doing. That was the turning point. Even the defense lawyer's arguments about family misunderstanding fell flat under the weight of Ethan's words and Clara's documentation. When the judge finally spoke, her tone was grave. The defendants, Lauren Hughes and Carter Hughes, are hereby found guilty of unauthorized access and theft. The court sentences each of you to 3 years of supervised probation. In addition, you are ordered to repay the victim, Ms. Clara Bennett, the full amount of $8,400. You are also to pay $5,000 in damages for emotional distress. She paused. Furthermore, a 5-year restraining order is issued against both defendants. Any attempt to contact Ms. Bennett, directly or indirectly, will be considered a violation and result in immediate legal consequences. Lauren gasped. Carter muttered something under his breath. But Clara remained still. This was justice, not revenge, not retribution, just the return of balance. And truth. As they left the courtroom, Lauren's eyes met Clara's for the briefest second. But it wasn't hate Clara saw, it was fear. Not just of the law, but of consequence, of accountability, of finally being seen for what she was. Outside, the sky was overcast, but Clara felt light. You okay? David asked. She nodded. Yeah, I think I really am. That evening, Clara and David met his parents, Estella and Richard Callahan, for dinner in the suburbs. They had heard the full story by now. Estella reached across the table and placed a gentle hand over Clara's. You're part of our family now, she said. And around here, that means being safe and being respected. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, not from pain, from something new, something she'd almost forgotten how to feel, belonging. As they left the restaurant, Ethan was waiting on the sidewalk. His hands were in his pockets again, his posture uncertain. Clara smiled and ran to hug him. What are you doing here? She asked. He looked sheepish. I heard from David. I just wanted to say congratulations. And thank you for not giving up on me. Clara pulled back. What will you do now? I'm moving to Denver. Found a job here. I want to be close to the only real family I've got left. Clara looked at him for a long time. You'll always have a place here, Ethan. Always. That night, as she lay beside David, his hand wrapped around hers, Clara realized something profound. She hadn't just won a case. She had reclaimed her voice, her worth, her boundaries, and she'd begun to build a new kind of family, one chosen with care, not dictated by blood. A week after the verdict, the days passed with a strange kind of stillness. No angry calls, no guilt-drenched messages, no knocks on the door. Clara's world had finally gone quiet. She wasn't used to it, but this quiet wasn't hollow, it was whole. One Saturday afternoon, David told her to dress warm and not ask questions. Clara raised a brow, but followed his lead, bundling up in her long camel coat and scarf. He drove them west, toward the foothills of the Rockies, as golden light spilled across the fading winter sky. They arrived at a secluded lake just outside Denver. The surface of the water shimmered under the soft light, surrounded by pine trees dusted in early spring frost. And right at the edge of the dock, a table set for two. Candles flickered gently under glass. A bottle of wine rested in a silver cooler. Clara's eyes widened. What is this? David smiled. A new chapter. They ate quietly, the silence between them now soft, not tense. They spoke of things beyond the past, travel plans, books, what kind of dog they might one day adopt. The kind of conversations people have when life feels possible again. As twilight turned to dusk, David stood. He walked around the table and took her hands. "Clara," he said, his voice low and certain, "these past few months, I've watched you fight for yourself in a way most people never find the courage to do. You stood against people who should have protected you, and you protected yourself." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small blue velvet box. Clara's breath caught. David knelt, opened it. Inside was a simple, stunning diamond ring that sparkled like the surface of the lake. "I don't want to fix you," he said, "because you were never broken. I just want to build something new with you. Clara Bennett, will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision, not from grief, not from loss, but from the overwhelming, quiet realization that she was finally being chosen, not out of need, not out of guilt, but from love. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." They embraced under the stars, the sound of water lapping gently behind them, the wind crisp with the scent of pine. For once, Clara didn't look back, not toward her past, not toward what she had lost, only forward. A few days later, a letter arrived at her apartment. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note, folded carefully. "Dear Clara, you may not remember me, but I'm Jenna Matthews, Carter's cousin. We met once at a barbecue years ago. I just wanted to say thank you. I was in a similar situation for years. My family used me, always calling it help or being there. And I stayed quiet, but after hearing what you did, I finally told them no. You gave me courage. It's not just about the money. It's about finally saying I deserve better. Thank you for reminding me I have the right to say that." Clara pressed the letter to her chest. In that moment, she understood something deeper than any court ruling could offer. This wasn't just justice for her. It was a ripple, a signal, a silent permission for others to protect themselves too. Later that night, as she sat curled beside David on the couch, he looked over and smiled. "You okay?" Clara nodded. "Better than okay." He kissed the top of her head. "You're not alone anymore." And she believed him, because this time, family wasn't blood. It wasn't duty. It wasn't silence in the face of harm. It was safety. It was love. It was a choice. The news story aired late on a Tuesday night. Clara hadn't known it was coming. Detective Selena Ward had only mentioned internal awareness campaigns. But there it was, a small segment titled "The Hidden Epidemic: Financial Crimes Within Families." Her name wasn't used. Her face wasn't shown. But her story was unmistakably hers. The broadcast featured anonymous voiceovers, reconstructed text messages, a simple graph showing the staggering rise in familial financial abuse among adult children with high incomes. Clara watched it from her living room, David's arm draped around her, Ethan sitting on the floor cross-legged with a bowl of popcorn untouched beside him. By the time the segment ended, Clara's phone was buzzing nonstop. Not from Lauren, not from Barbara, not even from Philip. These were strangers, dozens of them. Some had found her on LinkedIn. Others sent messages through mutual contacts. Many were short. "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for speaking up, even anonymously. Your story gave me the courage to finally confront my mother." I froze when I saw the screen. I've been through that exact moment too. Clara read each one slowly, tears building not from pain, but from something stronger, purpose. Later that week, a second letter arrived from Jenna Matthews, the cousin who had written to her after the trial. "Dear Clara, I wanted you to know that because of your strength, I didn't just walk away. I started over. I got my own place. I opened new accounts. I cut off contact with those who only remembered I existed when they needed something. You gave me a map, and for the first time in years, I'm not afraid. Thank you. Truly." J.M. Clara placed the letter inside a journal she'd started keeping since the trial, a small, leather-bound book she called Legacy. On the first page, she had written, "This is what happens when you stop apologizing for protecting your peace." Months passed. The court-ordered restitution was slowly repaid, not voluntarily but enforced. The $8,400 came back in small portions, garnished directly from Carter and Lauren's accounts. The $5,000 in emotional damages arrived as a lump sum after their tax refund was frozen. And while the money mattered, it wasn't the win Clara carried. What mattered was this: Nicholas lost his job. Carter's professional license was suspended. Their house was quietly listed for sale. Barbara and Philip, though not criminally charged, were named in the civil case and ordered to cease contact under court order. None of them ever reached out again. Ethan flourished in Denver, eventually moving just 2 blocks from Clara and David. He came over for dinner every Sunday, always bringing dessert and apologizing for it being store-bought. Clara never minded. On a warm spring morning, Clara received an email from a nonprofit director who had seen the news story. They were building a community initiative to help victims of family-based financial abuse. Would she be willing to share her experience, privately, anonymously, as part of a peer training program? Clara didn't hesitate. She wrote back, "Yes, count me in." She was no longer just the victim of a theft. She was a woman who had redrawn the lines, who had taught others to say no with clarity, who had proven that love without respect is not love at all. That weekend, as she sat beside David at their favorite cafe, watching the city wake around them, he reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Clara smiled. How something as horrible as betrayal turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. She looked out the window, where a little girl in a red raincoat was skipping through puddles. No fear, no shame, just freedom. And Clara realized she hadn't lost her family. She had found it. She hadn't been erased. She had rewritten everything. And this peace, this strength, this life was hers. Finally,